I always do this. Oh, we're live. I'm the world's worst streaming host. Hi, everybody. This is a commercial real estate morning news show, and we're live now, apparently, because my red thing went on. I've got in the house JJ Leonard, and we're going to talk office market today. And then we hopefully have a couple of guests join us. Hopefully, not. It might be me, JJ, and I talking office today. It's all right. It's all good. JJ, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, JJ Leonard with Stream Realty Partners here in Dallas. Many of you probably heard of Stream by now. We're this point a 28-year-old company, coast to coast in 15, 16 markets. But I've been with Stream for the past 10 years, been practicing commercial brokerage, really office brokerage and leasing primarily here in Dallas since 2001, since I got out of the Marine Corps. So that's kind of, started my career a little different, going into the military and then shifting gears into the private sector after a 5-year commitment. But yeah, been in here in Dallas my entire career, and it's a very good place to be. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my dad's a Marine, so there you go.
So am I.
Yeah,
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi, exactly. Hoorah. That's awesome. Very, very cool. All right. So I was telling JJ before we went live, we're going to kind of talk through some of the trends that are happening in the office market. We're both in Texas, so I'm in Austin, he's in Dallas. But so one of the things, or you kind of tell me what you're seeing. So I know in Austin, we've kind of reached a peak vacancy. I think here it's like 27%. I'm like, we're trying to beat out San Francisco for the most vacancy in Austin. What's happening in Dallas? What's the vacancy like in Dallas? What's going on there?
Really, it's a tale of two cities. I mean, it's you look at the overall, you strip the overall vacancy away from like the call center type buildings, right? And then the core of downtown, which we were talking about before the show started, where you're seeing some of these conversions to alternative uses, hospitality, residential, et cetera. And you really focus on the Class A office in those submarkets where you have the most demand. The vacancy in that area is around, I'd say 18 to 20%. Overall, and lower in some areas. And I'd say overall, though, when you're looking across the board at, Dallas as a whole, still we're in the mid 20s probably. But that's really tilted, kind of heavier and higher by those big skyscrapers downtown that we're talking about, with alternative uses coming into play. And then those call centers were, used to have a 6 to 8 per thousand type call center. And that's the type of job many of those went, post-COVID or during COVID went remote. Some went obviously work from home permanently, and some were shipped overseas. So I don't know how many of those types of jobs we'll get back. And I don't know. There's a push in Dallas, at least for some of those buildings, depending on where the location is, to try to convert them to industrial. So yeah, it's a very when you talk about the office market in any market, I think, but at least in Dallas, speaking for Dallas, I think you got to break it down into the different areas and the different building quality types and that sort of thing to really see what's active and what's not.
Yeah. And so it happens anytime there's like a recession, right? Everybody upgrades, right? I hear the Jefferson song in my head, moving on up, right? I mean, like everybody upgrades to, I'm in this piece of junk Class C office. I can get a Class A office now and, pay the same price or whatever it might be. And so they all kind of upgrade, which I think is it's normal. It happens in every real estate asset class, right? If there's any sort of recession or price pressure or people can kind of afford, is that the movement that you're seeing to Class A?
There's been a huge flight to quality, flight to experience. We've put different phrases to it, but really it's kind of the same thing. We have seen that pre-COVID, and we saw it really, coming once tenants started coming back to the office post-COVID. For those companies that decided to do that, it was really a huge push to have the office feel more like home and more of a place that you wanted to spend time, not only within the office space itself where they're working, but within the building that they choose to work in. So landlords picked up on that very quickly, and there's been a lot of hospitality that has entered the look and feel of the office space. And so within the premises and then within the common areas. And so a lot of our clients in Class A buildings where has made sense to do so have invested a lot of dollars into really making the building feel, whether it's 80s, 90s, 2000 vintage or new buildings, of course, are in vogue because they're new. But all of that, you take all of that and you look at it in relative to the building's location. And generally speaking, those high quality, nice buildings, they have been sought after in a big way. And so we have seen 100% of our absorption in the Class A space every year since COVID. And but not only that, it's if you take that A and you take that double A and you kind of separate to the nicest, highest quality, most expensive office space in Dallas, it's leasing up, like hotcakes. It's really amazing the amount of activity we're seeing.
Ah, very cool. Welcome, Brad. How are you, buddy?
Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm good. Well, JJ and I were just talking about Dallas office market.
Okay.
That's all good. Well, welcome to the show. So, yeah, it's all good. So why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, name is Brad Gurla. I am an executive vice president at CBRE in New York. Our offices are located at 200 Park Avenue, right behind me.
Awesome.
And my specialty is office leasing, representing landlords and tenants in New York and nationally as well.
Ah, very cool.
Yeah, I caught, I guess, a little bit of JJ's what he was talking about in terms of the market. But go ahead. I missed.
Yeah, we were just talking about how the market's shifting to upgrading to like going from people are moving more towards the Class A. That type of market is actually what's actually leasing at the moment. And part of it was I was telling him it's like I had the song in my head, moving on up from the Jeffersons, because they're like people are upgrading from one class to the other. Is that what you're seeing in New York, or what's happening in New York?
Absolutely. It's kind of a tale of two cities in New York. You have your Class A or AAA space, which is typically new product or product that's been built in the last 10 years. And, I would assume this is the same in the Dallas market. Your Dallas market, right, JJ, you said?
Correct.
Yeah. That's been leasing very well. There have been, it's unprecedented, the deals that were done over $200 a foot.
Wow.
Usually the bellwether was $100 a foot. Now it's 200.
Wow.
And that's needless to say, there's a lot of $100 deals a foot being done. And again, that's in the quality space, being leased by the financial firms, private equity, law firms. And in New York, the issue is we're running out of space. If you're in the market for 100,000 square, 50 to 100,000, and you want prime space, there's very few alternatives. So, typically in New York, you get, when the A space starts to lease up, then it moves its ways down to the B space, C space, which New York has a lot of. An old city has a lot of older space, which has been redone. Landlords have spent money and fixed up the lobbies, amenities, etc. So and demand is there. The back to work is very much in vogue. Chase just announced 5 days a week. Journal yesterday or 2 days ago. Amazon, it's 5 days a week. So we're seeing a lot more back to work. And New York always seems to reinvent itself. There's always a new business that takes over, and through all the crises we've had, it seems to always come back pretty strong.
Are you seeing any office to residential conversions there? No?
Good question. Yes, that's a very big, that's a new nuance to our market this time around.
Okay.
Very big. I mean, it was a little bit in the 80s when Giuliani was mayor, but in the last couple of years, the last year, the conversion from commercial to residential has been unprecedented.
So we were talking a little bit before the show, and I used to be a former general. I owned a construction company at one point. That sounds like brain damage to me. Like, it sounds like it's so difficult because yes, you've got steel and you got glass, great. But the formats and the floor plates, and it just has to like fit. And then the mechanical and the plumbing alone it just sounds horrible to me.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah.
but so how are you seeing them work?
So not every building works for resident from commercial. It's just the layout of the floor just doesn't work. In one instance, downtown at 4 New York Plaza, I mean, it's a very big 50,000-foot floor. So the bigger the floor, the harder it is for residential. They actually cut up in a hole in the middle, create the window space, and so you have to get a little creative. But it seems the numbers are there for conversion.
Yeah. Are they able to buy at price points? I guess that was the whole story, was they're able to buy at price points now where it finally pencils and makes sense. Okay. It's mostly the Class C, Class B.
Yeah. There's they're also the bottom line is they're all prime locations in New York. The residential market's still pretty strong, especially on the rental side. It's got a very low vacancy, and there's a demand for residential. Listen, everyone needs a roof over their head.
That is very true. So how's that happening? Is it downtown Dallas, right, JJ? Is what you were saying?
For the most part, yeah, it's occurring big time in the urban core, in those skyscrapers that in the true core of downtown that have blocks of vacancy that just aren't going to be absorbed by the annual absorption numbers and the demand that we're seeing for that particular area. And so you're starting to see, at first it was like 1940s, 50s, 60s vintage buildings that were obsolete. And those were smaller, more bite-sized conversions that worked really well because of the floor plate size and whatnot. Now, when you talk about a 50, 60-story skyscraper, and taking elevator banks out and converting them, it's having kind of a mixed use within a tower, right? They're bringing in not only resi but hotel, and kind of having those exist on top of each other within banks in the building, and then putting office on the top of that. So it's interesting. There's a group down here, Pacific Elm, that is, they've bought up 6 or 7 properties with the idea to do either partial or complete resi conversions. One of them is 1 million feet. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of how the market responds to that. It's a lower alternative price point to Uptown, which is kind of our newer submarket just to the north of downtown, where we have our highest rents in the city. And so it'll be interesting to see, because there's a huge demand still for apartment space in Dallas, as we have a lot of people moving here, and a lot of the Gen Z, Gen Y, they want to live in an urban area around others where there's a walkability factor, and so that checks the boxes in Dallas. It's just having those all stacked on top of each other and working together. That'll be it's worked in a couple of deals they've done so far, so it'll be interesting to see how it works going forward.
So the parking requirements for office versus the parking requirements for residential, are they close? Are they similar?
They're fairly similar, and you can have it to where you can share the office can share with the residential just due to the timing most of the time. Now, if you have folks working from home and they have a car, the car's there all day. So that's a little bit of a dance trying to figure out the parking component. A lot of downtown Dallas was built when the actual covered parking ratio of the spaces below the building itself that were controlled by that particular landlord, or 1 to 1.5 per thousand, and from a parking standpoint, whereas the kind of market norm across the suburban office for many years was 3 per thousand, so 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet leased. So Dallas is not like from New York, Boston, Chicago, where you have a really solid mass transit system. We do have DART, which is a light rail, but it's still not used to the extent that the subway in New York or the L, or you name it, in these very dense urban markets in the Midwest and Northeast where they have a long-standing solid mass transit system. So it'll be interesting to see how the parking issues are solved in Dallas, where we're all addicted to our cars. So yeah.
Yeah, no, we are. It's Texas. We're addicted to our cars.
Right. Don't take my truck.
Brad, are you seeing how is and both of you, but I'll start with Brad. All right, how is the financing environment for office? Like, did you are there still being new offices being built or remodeled, or is the financing environment good, or is it?
It's a good question. I mean, you have, well, there's a couple things. You have, first of all, you have the loans that are coming due in New York,
right,
which is a lot of the CMBS loans are coming due, and those are the most difficult. And those deals were done when, pre-COVID,
right,
market was strong, things have softened. So there's been a lot of buildings that are on watch or not, or if not in receivership, because it's virtually impossible to get financing, even with almost a 90% leased building. You're seeing that a lot. So there's a lot of renegotiation. But if you have a building that's fully leased and is with pretty strong rents, you're going to get it financed. Tishman Speyer just got the Spiral, which is in Hudson Yards, brand new office building, 2-point-something million square foot office building, 95% leased. They just I read that they're refinancing it for over $2 billion.
Okay.
So I think it's a select group of who gets financed and who doesn't, but it's definitely challenging, more challenging now than ever for a lot of the older buildings to get refinanced.
Yeah. So I find it interesting because obviously with how easy the money is, it leads into how many real estate transactions we do. So on the office to resi conversions, are those is that multifamily finance? How are they doing this, especially those mixed use? Are they using CMBS, or is CMBS dead at the moment?
No, I think CMBS.
Go ahead. Go, Jay.
I think CMBS is one of the only ways to get office deals financed right now, actually. So I would say it's not dead at all. Okay. I would say that your life co loans, your the fund, the loan funds that are out there, the real estate funds that are out there that have debt components to them, et cetera. I mean, those are it's a little more challenging to get financing from those traditional sources. So a lot of groups turn to CMBS because they have to. I just I have good friends that are on the capital market side, both in the investment sales and the debt and equity side, and office is starting to be looked at. We're starting to see deals that are being sold and refinanced. But it's just been taking a while, and it's certainly, I would not say it's frothy yet. There's not a lot of capital out there for that. It's very, very tough. As Brad was saying, you can have quality office space that is very well stabilized, even with a long-term, WALT or rent horizon there, and it can still be very challenging for that space to leave, or for that for those buildings to sell or be refinanced. But I think 2025 is going to we're going to see a shift in that. Just talking to my buddies in that sector, they're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel there, and a lot of lenders are starting to warm up to office. So it'll start with the high quality, best well leased stuff, and if it's going to be spec, it's got to be very, very well pre-leased to good credit tenants. But I think that's going to happen, and it'll be a domino effect. So right. Just kind of like the return to the office. You see some of these big institutions saying, "Hey, we're getting back to the office," and then all of a sudden it's the copycat effect. Groups start coming back, and because JP Morgan's doing it, AT&T's doing it, et cetera. And so I think we're see a little bit more of that once the fundamentals start to make more sense on the office side.
Yeah, I got you. Welcome, Paul. How are you, buddy? He's stuck. He's frozen. Paul, you're frozen, man. Okay, so I'm going to do my best Paul Sheedy impression. He's an Irishman that lives in London.
Can you hear me, Amy?
There you are. You saved me from doing an impression of you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh,
Welcome.
God, thank God. I don't think growing that facial hair again, Amy, okay? Doesn't suit you.
I know, for sure. So introduce yourself, bud.
Hi, I'm Paul Sheedy, CEO of Unified. We do occupancy technology to make buildings smarter and more sustainable. And I completely agree with what you're saying there, JJ Leonard. We're seeing exactly the same sentiment kicking here in the UK. I've seen this week WPP and the government are trying to get people back, and actually with some reservations from the staff. But I think 2025 will teach that actually the employers are the ones who are running the businesses, not the employees, which is what the case was in 2024. So I welcome back to normal again, is what we like to say. Welcome
back to normal. You really think it's going to happen? I don't know. There's some real stubborn people out there, Paul. I don't know. Maybe. I guess, since it would depend on how the job market goes. If they really start laying people off and they can't find work, then yes, people will return to the office, won't they? For sure. I guess. I think we're in for a little bit of a rough ride globally over the next few months, and I think those wise enough will step up and start working a little harder and trying to get productivity. I mean, we're aiming for 1% growth in the UK, which I just think is laughable. Your target is 1%. I mean, please, everybody, where is this AI? Exactly. Yeah, I know. AI is going to make the world better. We're all going to be 5% growth in the, it's going to be awesome. Talking about AI, that I wanted to see it in everybody's markets, but in one of the stories that was out was talking about how a lot of the AI companies are actually taking up the office space that they're actually actively leasing. There was one actually in Dallas, JJ. They're expanding their footprint. And I guess it was Irving or Arlington, somewhere like that in the DFW area. But are AI companies leasing up office space in your markets? Are y'all seeing any of that?
Yeah, I'm seeing it in New York. I mean, it's not the most dominant tenant right now, but they're definitely a new tenant to the market. They just leased about 100,000 square feet in a building down on 14th Street, and there are others that are expanding. So it's definitely a new tenant to watch, new demand.
Yeah. I mean, they're well funded. I mean, they've got venture capital coming out of their ears, so that probably helps. You would think that helps. Well, but it seems like an oxymoron to me because they're an AI company. Why would they need to, why aren't they all just remote, or why aren't there AI employees running their AI company?
It's a good question.
Guess we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. Crazy town. So going into the first quarter this year, I always like to ask the people kind of active in the space. I mean, obviously you said that you're seeing more stuff. We're on the Class A side, and we're pretty much reaching occupancies in that sector. Is there anything else, any other trends this first quarter this year that y'all are seeing that that would be helpful for people to know?
I don't know. I think we're seeing more corporate relocations start to percolate. It's either that or regional consolidations. Mm-hmm. That was something that we saw over, call it 23 and 24 in Dallas. If you recall, pre-COVID, we had some huge corporate relocations or consolidations here. Toyota was one of the biggest, but I think we're starting to see, it was the 10 to 20,000 square foot, 50,000 square foot relocations, many from California and maybe from the Midwest and some other areas. But I think we're starting to see just out, touring the market and talking to different, senior brokers who are kind of running point on some of these transactions where these groups are looking at multiple cities, anywhere from 100 to 500,000 square feet and up. We're really starting to see a lot more of that. So there was a post-pandemic lull, And it really feels like that's kind of kicked back up. I don't know if that's just a post-election, like, okay, this is the environment we're going to be in for the next 4 years. So now I feel more comfortable doing A, B, or C, or if it's the, hey, everybody's coming back to the office. That's our mandate. We want to be in this city, but we're certainly starting to see more of that. We had a couple of tire kickers that were just trying to leverage their existing situation with your existing municipalities to try to get incentives to stay where they were. But we're actually seeing some groups, look to move. So I think we'll see a little bit more of that in 25. And like Paul was saying, I think you're going to see a little bit of the tug of war with some companies on getting the employees back to the market, back to the office, be it in a full capacity scenario or a hybrid scenario. But I think more and more companies are going to mandate that. And so the demand, I think, is going to continue to spike. Last year in Dallas was our best year, not only as a team, I should say, within Stream. It was our Dallas office. It was our best year from a revenue standpoint ever. And we're founded in Dallas. It's our first of our 16 markets we're in now. But our office leasing team had our best year ever, which is a testament, I think, just to the activity out there. So, and the rents they're not New York rents. We're not hitting $200 a foot anytime soon, but we're hitting on a gross basis. We're starting to hit, $80 to $90 gross in some of the nicest space, which is unfathomable if you'd asked me that 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, for sure. What about New York, Brad?
Well, so I guess some positive trends are the availability rate is starting to go down. The sublet market is starting to shrink. During COVID, that was a big concern. Whenever New York goes through a financial crisis or 9/11, sublet space was always an issue. Tenants putting space on the market, retrenching. That has subsided substantially. So that's always a positive sign when our sublease market goes down, that the market is getting stronger, and the availability rate is starting to decrease. I mean, albeit, a lot of space has been taken off the market from residential conversion, but still, we're seeing a availability rate that's shrinking, and hence rents start to rise, concessions start to go down. So it's becoming maybe a landlord's market again. But if you're in the market now, we have a lease coming up, and if you have a lease coming up in 27, you're 200,000 square foot tenant, you have to be looking now for space.
Wow.
You can't now wait.
Interesting.
Because by 27, there's not going to be much space. In terms of the new construction, there's not much new construction slated for New York that's going to be ready in 27.
Interesting. So is there any sort of leasing kind of demands that tenants are like that you're seeing now that you really didn't see before? Is it anything around energy efficiency or anything like that?
Yeah, it's all about, look, and I think maybe JJ was talking about early on, amenitizing the buildings, which is somewhat never really is in vogue right now, where landlords are having amenities in the buildings, gyms, cafeterias, lounges, restaurants, just a lot of amenities and employers like to have that for the tenants, for their employees, to encourage them to come back to work and to encourage a nice workplace. So seeing a lot of that, where there be the buildings being amenitized.
Yeah. Okay. And as far as terms of are the lengths of the leases changing at all or anything? Like, are they the typical 5-10 year lease?
Yeah, I mean, it's the term. I mean, you're always going to have the co-working type tenants who want the short term, 6 months to 2 years. We see a lot of that for the newer companies. They only want 2 or 3 years, the smaller companies, but typically a 10,000 square foot tenant is not signing anything less than 10 years in New York right now.
Interesting. Very cool.
So, yeah.
What about in London, Paul? When you're walking in
I'm sorry, but I got to jump.
I know.
Thank you
for
so
coming,
much.
Brad. Thanks.
Nice to meet you guys. All right.
Yeah.
Brad.
Thanks.
Take care.
Brad. You're sort of emotional. I think what we're seeing here, really, in co-working especially, is a lot of investment has gone into really making them look stunning, and have all those facilities that I was just mentioning there. But none of us have seen these interest rates going on as long, as high as any of us expected. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing a number of really high profile ones now in the UK have just gone under, and are coming back out. One in particular has come back out of a pre-pack straight away, but absolutely huge amount of debt in the company, and that was really about everything being shiny and incredible, and the dream, and you name it, they had everything on them, but the fundamentals weren't working, and that's why they were losing. I think one year, I think in 2019 was losing 13 million, 2020 16, etc. But these are only 3 buildings. You're losing 16 million a year. And you've had like about 200 million in investment in for 3 buildings. It's a bit worrying that model can't work. And I think we've seen something really spectacular co-working spaces where they're just 6-star hotels, but the rent per desk is not where it actually needs to be, and I think that's where the inflection point is. Nobody really saw this longer term high interest rate, and the UK has gone through a very bad time in the last week or two now with bond market. The interest rates are crazy high on that for UK debt, which means we'll have higher taxes. So there's quite a negative, I would say, in the UK. Not so much on the property side, but in terms of business overall in the UK, it's very negative. It's negative. I've seen it for many years now.
There was an article out a couple days ago about Brookfield's kind of position, and because they're the largest office owner in London, and they're kind of in a tenable spot, right? They're like, it's one of those moments where you're like, holy hell. So where they're not doing well, right? And so they're kind of facing a lot of challenges. And but Office Property Income Trust in the US had the same thing. They were forecasting, I guess, back in Q4 that like, holy hell, if we can't restructure this debt, we're going to go bankrupt, right? And then they pulled a rabbit out of a hat and they restructured the debt. So I'm assuming Brookfield will have the same magical like magician that comes along and restructures the debt and figures it out. I think a lot of those large companies have that ability, but it sucks at the moment for sure.
Again, as I said, where I'm working here in Canary Wharf, I know they're going through about a 2 billion restructuring of debt here. But again, they have to QA money. As I mentioned, there is a lot of external money out there for these trophy properties and regions. So I think between Brookfield and the Qataris, they had to find a restructure of that 2 billion debt, which they did, of course. But it's interesting times, As we said before, it's a class B and C, so I think there's going to be a real issue in the next few years.
Oh, for sure. And they'll probably get gobbled up for resi, or they'll I don't know, convert into something. They can't. Everybody thought they could become medical office buildings, but if we had Deanie on the show, he would tell you, nope, the elevator shafts don't work, and you'd have to redo the whole damn elevator system, and it's not an easy conversion to take an office building and make it medical. Maybe a dentist, maybe you can make it where they don't need like big elevators for gurneys, but it's kind of an interesting thing for sure. Yeah.
But what also is interesting, and I'd like your opinion on this, from this side of the pond, been some worrying things. BlackRock deciding they're going to decouple themselves from sustainability targets, Facebook, etc., saying they're no longer doing monitoring of. What's the view over your side of the pond on that stuff?
Facebook's not going to do monitoring. And
they're going to stop monitoring. They're going to basically free up and let people write what they want and stop.
That's that. You can spell that TRUMP. They're placating the current
lapdogs. Boris Johnson used to be described as Trump's little poodle, and I think we're seeing the same. It's actually quite worrying. I think fundamentally it's quite worrying that what we're seeing is all the billionaires lining up to say, please be nice to me, Mr. Trump, because I'll be nice to you. And it's concerning that the biggest social media companies now seem to be running the media of the world. We have your one friend, Mr. Musk, literally intervening in UK politics on a rate that is unbelievable and really getting it wrong, by the way. Very wrong. He picked on one particular minister who I have to say.
Yeah, I wonder what it is that he gets excited about. It's really kind of odd to me, the things that he does. But yeah, I don't claim him. I know he's here in Austin, but I don't claim him. But that's okay. He's got what is it, like $400 billion? He's got a little bit of money, so he can do. He's got a little bit of money, so he can do pretty much whatever the F he wants to do. But it is.
Is this fundamentally right? Is it morally correct for a foreign person to be intervening in another country's politics completely? And he's going to Germany. He's actually backing the far right party in Germany. So I'm like,
what? Yeah, I don't know. I guess, yeah, it is. But we've had Russians and Ukrainians trying to get into our elections, and everybody else trying to get into our elections, and everybody blames. It's usually the Russian and Chinese or somebody weird that we're worried about interfering in. Yeah, the easy ones we can.
But what's the feeling about BlackRock? Exactly. So what's the feeling about BlackRock walking away from sustainability targets? I mean, that's something that I would have thought. I can't see how that's in the best interest. Is this a Trump situation again?
I
don't know. I think personally, I think I've seen a lot of companies kind of back off a little bit on some of the demands with respect to sustainability in office and whatnot in the U.S. And that was pre-election. I mean, just there's certain requirements that they were pushing for that were limiting the amount of the number of office building candidates that they could office in, because they were so stringent and so high that the costs were so exorbitant for these landlords to speculatively, or if the company was big enough and they wanted to do a build-to-suit and they wanted to spend that extra money to have all those levels of LEED and sustainability and whatnot on top of it, the cost started to be pretty exorbitant. And so I think some of them looked at it the bottom line and were like, okay, we need to back off a little bit so we can open, to more candidates for our future office space, so to speak. I don't think the companies have abandoned it altogether. I don't think landlords have abandoned it altogether. I just don't think it's as important maybe as it was. So, I mean, I think there's all kinds of factors that go into what's a company's looking for in its office space, right? And so they got to prioritize. Yeah. And somewhere in there is, believe it or not, even though they're electing to lease usually the nicest space out there, somewhere in there is cost, And so I think you have a little bit of that friction between, sustainability and X, Y, and Z on top of that, and then cost.
Yeah.
And then a variety of locations that they could choose from that could best suit their needs. And if that pool shrinks because just the number of buildings that check those boxes are small, I think you see that the rebound effect of a little bit of a loosening of the requirements. So that's what we see here in Texas, in our little piece of the global world climate. When I say climate, not climate, but the office market climate. So I don't want to get too political, but
I just think that Americans love freedom, and so we buck pretty much any regulation. Like if you were going to say you can't do this, you can't do that, we're JD and I are very Texan. We go whatever, we're going to do it anyway. But I also think it's really, if it pencils, they'll do it. If it saves them money, they'll do it. And they got to connect the dots. But I also think if the tenants start demanding it, they'll do it, right? If they can't lease something because a tenant is saying my electric bill is too high because we don't have LED and we don't have this and we don't have that and we don't have, whatever it might be. But none of those things are occurring.
I can tell you that even in conservative, Texas, so to speak, that we have a lot of requirements, some national, some state and local, with respect to energy efficiency that we have to hit. And there was a space that was built out by Hilton, one of the tenants in one of my buildings. They have a regional headquarters here, and they built it out probably 7-8 years ago. It's a nice space. It was kind of gently used because post COVID they were not, that group that office on those couple of floors were not using their space. And so it's a nice space to show right now because they've consolidated kind of in a different tower within the complex. So we're showing that space, and lo and behold, even though it's, nice lighting, LED, et cetera, the number of lights and the type of lights and the number, the output that they have, we have to retrofit it. So I was surprised. It was because the IECC had changed the codes and required a more efficient system. We're seeing it in the, replacing the refrigerator, replacing HVAC. So those laws to try to, implement new infrastructure within office buildings that are more efficient, that put out less and use less energy, put off less emissions. We're seeing that. I mean, we're seeing that, and it's, you're having to adhere to that when you're building space out. It's more expensive, but the thought process is okay, but it's better for the environment long term. It's better for, our energy grid long term, and so landlords are doing it. So yeah, there's a happy medium there somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I think so. What as far as the Class A is there any development happening in Dallas? Is there still active development going on?
There is. Goldman Sachs is building 800,000 square foot campus. It's going to be their second largest location outside of New York City. 5,000 employees. They've already got about 450,000 square feet here now that they're going to consolidate into that and grow. And then you have another, call it 1.5 million square feet in Uptown that is under construction. Beyond that, which Uptown is kind of our, nicest, most 24/7 type, just north of our downtown area, kind of bleeds into the Arts District part of downtown.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of demand there, and it's traditionally where we've seen the most new construction, the highest rents. And then you have about 1.5 million square feet being built up in Plano and Legacy, where Toyota's campus, JP Morgan has 1.5 million square feet up there, Liberty Mutual, et cetera. But generally speaking, pre-COVID, our peak construction numbers were 8 to 9 million at any given time in the cycle, and right now we're half that. So we're certainly off from where we were, just because we were talking about capital constraints and cost constraints. So I think that's good that we're not overbuilding, because that's always been the knock on Dallas. You got nothing but land and places to build, and it's easy to just throw new office buildings up there. So to have a little bit of a governor on that, so to speak, is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just curious that since Dallas has always been such a financial center, and it's always, it was like the second New York kind of, which is kind of interesting. Has the Texas Stock Exchange had any impact yet? I mean, it's really fairly new.
It's too new to tell. They're in a temporary location. They're getting their SEC hurdles cleared so they can start, trading and doing whatnot. Then they're going to find a permanent location kind of in that uptown, downtown area is where they're looking. So we have two, very prominent brokers who left CB to come to Stream. Jeff and John Ellerman came over and joined our team on the tenant rep side. They represent the Texas Stock Exchange. So, I was just talking to John about it last week, and they're officing with Fortress. Fortress moved their headquarters from LA to here, 2-3 years ago, and so they're up in kind of that Knox district, just north of Uptown. Yeah, and so they're going to be there temporarily for the next year while they find their new permanent space. But all that Y'all Street and all that, we'll see. We'll see what that all amounts to. But yeah, I think we're certainly the financial capital of the Southwest, and while Austin is, I would say Silicon Valley 2.0, um, Dallas is certainly kind of like a New York 2.0 when it comes to financial center and wealth center, and there's a lot of service business here. So, and the economy is very diversified. People look at oil and gas and generally spread that blanket across Texas, but that really is Houston a lot more than it is Dallas or Austin. It's a very very small piece of our pie when it comes to our whole economy.
Yeah, no, for sure. Paul, in London went off what was it? The coal, like no more coal for
drug. Let's call it the drug, the coal drug. We've gone clean turkey.
You went clean turkey.
Coal turkey.
That was in September.
That
was in September. So you're all. How are you doing? Is it natural? How are you doing your electric generation now? Since there's no coal, how are you doing it?
We've moved into a big mix of offshore wind, little solar, some hydro, but then gas. Still, we still need to get off this drug of gas as well. But at the moment, we're still piping a lot of gas in. But it's going the right direction. It is going the right direction. I think also the other thing is that they're pushing very, very hard to try and get companies to get switch over from fluorescent lighting to LED, and that's going to save you 70% of your energy on just like 80% maybe on lighting alone straight away. So there's a lot of quick wins, and actually it's profitable to do things like that. Switching your lights out will make you money immediately. You can lease the lights for 5 years. There's no excuse. I'm pushing really trying to see even get more solar moving, especially large factory roofs, etc. I mean, we got an issue in West London where they're literally running out of energy right now because so many data centers opened up that it's completely on the brink. There's nothing left over there. So I'm working with one company right now that's a huge dry cleaning laundry operation, massive place. But they got data centers out of sight. And I said, well, why don't we just get all three of you in a room together, because you're producing so much heat in the data centers, and let's use that heat into the dry cleaning, the laundry business. So we've got an engineer now looking at how we can, suck that hot air out of the data center.
Well, I think eventually the data centers will start generating their own power, and using that heat to generate power is probably one of the ways the exhaust heat is like crazy. The amount
of energy they're using is just
yeah. So I didn't know. So they are having power issues that they went off of coal, or is it just spotty?
It's West London is really on the brink. It's constantly on full throttle, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's crazy. And what we need policies change over there. We need all the roofs of all the factories to have solar, stuff like that. Just ways of doing this.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. So the renewable energy discussion that we've obviously now we have Trump, so everybody thinks he doesn't believe in it, or I'm not sure what he believes. So yeah, I mean, look, LA, don't even get me started on LA. Yeah, I feel for all of those people. And if you happen to be watching our show, we are praying for you and hope that the fires get put out quickly. It's mind-boggling to me what's happening in LA at the moment. I do have friends there, and I hope that they're all safe for sure, and finding places to hunker down because they can't be in their house. But yeah, that devastation is nuts. And the whole, there'll be obviously investigations. There's lots of calls for like everybody's heads. They all want everybody to get fired, and they want everybody to get replaced. And some of it, I understand. But on the renewable, the renewable side, what besides the data centers, I mean, the office buildings, I mean, are you tying anything with your occupancy censoring into the whole energy supply? I mean, how is it, other than you're shutting lights off when, like, it was just so funny, you're an occupancy sensor guy and the lights cut off on you because you didn't move for I think it's hilarious.
He didn't
But,
excite me the same thing. He didn't excite me. He didn't get me animated. Right. I'm moving again. No, we do. So what we do, a lot of what I do now is work on, it's called, let's call it AI. It's looking at the DNA of each floor of each building you might have in Dallas, and then looking at what influences that DNA each day, and then working on predictive analysis. So we can say to JJ Leonard, right, JJ, tomorrow this floor was going to look, its plateau of usage will look like X, Y, or Z. So how do we minimize the amount of energy going to be used in that particular building? I mean, we got some bad clients. We got some clients here with 2% occupancy, as I said before, on Fridays, and yet we're running at 100% everything as if it's 2019, whenever it was back in the office. But there's some really stupid things going on right now, and we're trying to hammer home that there's a lot of very simple ways of you saving energy. I mean, when we know the last person's leaving a floor, override that PIR system, turn the lights off straight away. Save yourself 30 minutes of hundreds of lights on a floor. There's lots of ways of doing this. It needs two things. It needs people to be motivated to actually want to do it, and it needs just a bit of momentum to say, okay, I'm going to set some hard targets. I'm going to try to decrease my energy by 20, 30, 40% this year. And those who do that will get there. But most people just don't give a damn about sustainability. Totally honest.
Well, I would just think that as it ties back to the electric grid, if we can understand what's happening in the buildings and use that predictive and then tie the building information to the grid, right? We can be better. We can have more an interesting conversation on how we navigate power usage in a city, for instance, right? I just everybody just is going to data centers because they're sucking out all the power, which I totally get. They are sucking out all the power, but maybe we can find other ways. And I didn't know if there's been any conversations in London about that, because you end up speaking at all these crazy level. I don't know, Paul, you're a really cool dude. Apparently everybody likes you. Apparently, I think you're a superstar. You're a superstar, right? You go speak to China.
I'll tell you that.
And all these other people.
Who told you this rubbish? Who told you that rubbish? Anyway, you're completely wrong for once in your life.
All right. You're wrong. You invited to all these places. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in China. And I'm like talking to like the ambassador for this or that and the other. You just like dropped that. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, is Paul famous? And I didn't know Paul was famous.
You're wrong. Don't you worry. Actually, I am meeting the Chinese ambassador Thursday morning. So actually,
See, this is what he does to me.
Okay. Yeah, you didn't tell me I was going to be on with greatness here. So.
It's royalty.
You have brushed your hair and I'm just short, huh? Anyway, no, but like I mean, I do a lot of traveling. I see a lot of countries where they're taking it a lot more serious than we are, and a lot of this is very simple to do, but it needs a change in attitude. It needs a change in culture. And if anything, and I hope at LA people go, actually, maybe we should change the way we're doing things. I mean, John Kerry made that statement when he was giving a speech in London. He said, here we are, the land of Tesla, and only 4% of Americans are driving EVs, where it's 50% nearly in China, 15% in Europe. It's it's time for change.
Yeah, I feel you. All right, gentlemen, we're at the end of our hour. Look at that. See, JJ,
it's been great to see you.
JJ,
hey, awesome. Great to meet you.
Yeah,
virtually across the pond.
Don't believe a word Amy says, okay? I am not a celebrity. Not even an E-lister yet.
Yeah, not an E-lister yet. Well, this has been super fun.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we'll do this every Monday. This is our office show. We'll talk about all the things happening in the office industry. So thanks everybody for watching. And y'all too. Hey, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you. I'll pretend to be a podcast host for a second. JJ, how can anybody get a hold of you that want to?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to find. There are not a ton of JJ Leonards and none others at Stream Royalty Partners that I know of. So you can always reach out there or just click our website. Search for me right there on our website, and it has my cell phone and email address. So pretty easy.
Thank you. And Paul? He's,
Well, you can
he's
follow me on Hello Magazine, MTV Cribs, Time Magazine Man of the Year, or find me on LinkedIn.
exactly, of course. Man of the year, Paul Sheedy, man of the year. That's what I got.
Right. That's right.
Roll with me.
Something, so some
Exactly.
extra-human Man of the Year. Come on. Listen, Amy, it's been a pleasure. Sorry I was late today. My apologies. I
All good.
horrendous traffic.
All good. All right. Yeah. And then this has been a show of the U.S. PropTech Council. See y'all next week.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Take care.